Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Brittnee. So, my sister is getting married and we've spent a lot of time planning the wedding. We were thinking up ideas for invites and we came up with a really fun idea for a save the date. And you guys know me, once I have an idea, I get stuck on it and I have to see it through. And it has something to do with chocolate. So I filmed the whole process and I'm going to share it with you in today's video. So for my sister's save the dates, we're going to be making custom chocolate bars. If you follow me on Instagram, you'll have seen that I've been spending a lot of time playing around with designs on the Cococa tablet bar mold that was designed by Kirsten Tibbles. If you don't follow me yet on Instagram, you should go do that. It's at Brittnee K Bakes. And my Instagram is lagging far behind my YouTube channel because I don't really try to grow on there. But I do post some fun random stuff and definitely post a lot of behind the scenes that I never post to YouTube. So if you're interested in that, go check it out. And also, just for fun, I looked up what Cococa means, and it is Italian for droplet or bead of liquid. So it makes a lot of sense why this mold design is named that. And in case you missed my YouTube short that I posted last week, I am creating my own unmolding boards. You might have seen me use these unmolding boards before in my last video I did, and then you'll see me use them again in today's video. I use an acrylic board when I unmold chocolate bars because chocolate bars are long and can be really thin, and we can't slam down the mold onto the counter like we do with bonbons or the bars will break. So to keep the bars safe, I just tip them out onto an unmolding board. Sometimes I get you guys asking me where I got my boards, and I actually bought them from Saver School in Australia. So I can't really recommend that you get those because shipping is a lot. So I thought I'll just create my own. And I launched them last week as a pre-order so that I could know around about how many to order. The pre-order sale included all the color options, but that is now closed. And now that I know the most popular ones, I'm ordering extra of just those. So I'm ordering matte black and clear. So those are still up on my website at brittneek.com in case you're interested in buying an unmolding board. The boards are 7 inches by 11, which is big enough to unmold any bar mold that I have. I've never had a problem with that size. And then there will be a little engraving in the bottom right corner of my signature, just for fun. And in the future, if you guys like these boards and want more fun colors, just let me know and I can make those too. And one more thing before we get started. For those of you who are waiting for me to release the custom bonbon stamp course that I have promised you, I am still working on it. I'm really sorry that it's taking so long. I have a ton of footage and it's going to take a really long time to organize all of that and edit everything. And I've also been busy with these save the date bars and a handful of other things besides work. So it's taken me a little bit longer than I had hoped it would. So I just wanted to give you a little update that I'm still working on it, and instead of mid-March, which is past now, I'm planning to release it the second week of April. So I'm thinking next week I will post an Easter egg design video and then take a week break while I finish up the course, and then it should be out the next week. This is what I'm gonna work on. And today's subscriber highlight comes from a comment from my last video, and it is Mark Lariviere. It's kind of fun to try to pronounce you guys' names, so we'll see if I got that one right today. But thank you for your really kind and encouraging comment. I always appreciate that from you guys. It really does motivate me to keep learning and filming and posting videos. So thanks for being here. I appreciate you. All right, let's make a bunch of chocolate bars. Before I show you my final 3 chocolate bar designs and how to create them, here are a bunch of test designs I did first. As you can see, I was playing around with black and green and gold. On these ones, I was testing ways to have the green peek through the black. I considered throwing some pink into the mix, which in the end didn't feel right, but I do like how the texture of this pink turned out. On this one, I was playing with painting white roses, but wasn't my favorite. This one ended up being a final design without the white. It's hard to tell what's going on with this one. They are spirals of green and gold. For the final version of this, I did the technique a bit different, so the details stand out more. I love how this design turned out, even though I didn't end up using it because of the pink. It reminds me of Bridgerton and also the games Hollow Knight and Silksong. My sister loved this design, so it became another one of our final designs. And because my sister also loves a surprising pop of color, I threw this design into the mix. We were kind of obsessed with this bar, and we paired it with a very clean and modern looking wrapper, but in the end we decided to lean more into the overall vibe of the wedding rather than a fun surprise. You'll see the final wrapper design at the end of the video. And for the 3 final bars, we stuck with black, green, and gold. All of the cocoa butters I used are pre-colored from Chef Rubber, Alabaster White, Jade Green, and Eclipse Black. For decorating, I used a pastry brush, a toothbrush, a small round brush, and a medium flat brush. I also used these 4-point star sponge brushes in medium and small, and then these large and medium round sponge brushes with trimmed corners so that they were a little bit more spherical. To mix my luster dust, I love to use a plastic palette, a liquid dropper, and then I make my paint with lemon extract. The edible gold luster dust I use is Dazzle Dust from Genere Cakes. And here is the Gotcha mold by Kirsten Tibbles. I only had one of these before this project, so I ordered 10 more. They're actually on sale right now on Bake Deco, which was really helpful for this project. I'll link the mold in the description. Each mold has 3 cavities, so with all 11 of my molds, I would make 33 bars total, which was exactly what I needed. I like to polish my clean molds with food grade ethanol and cotton. For these molds, I like to start in the corners with a pointed Q-tip. Then I take a cotton ball and polish the surface of the mold. From my test designs, I had some stubborn gold luster left on this mold, so I take a regular Q-tip and spot clean some of the areas on the surface as well. If I get a larger amount of ethanol on the mold that isn't evaporating right away, I usually just wave the mold like this back and forth until it's dry. Also, if the back of the mold is a bit cloudy from cocoa butter overspray or washing in the sink, I sometimes will run the cotton ball over the back as well. To start, I'm using the flat brush and the bigger of the 2 4-point star sponges. My black cocoa butter is tempered and I'm warming it up to working temperature. If you're new here and don't know how to temper or color cocoa butter, check out my tutorial in this card or linked in the description below. I'm going to start with design number 1, which me and my sister originally called moss, but then my family started calling it camouflage, which I also think makes sense, but I think I like moss better because it reminds me of a moody, humid landscape in Ireland. So from here on out, we're going to call it moss. To start the design, I'm just kind of sloppily painting black on all the side edges using the brush. This doesn't have to be perfect at all. It's just to get some coverage because I want the edges to be black rather than green. And it's easier to paint this small surface area with a brush rather than a sponge brush. Every so often between steps, remember to clean the surface of your mold. I do this by wiping it onto a clean paper towel. Okay, next I take the sponge brush and I'm essentially just tracing all of the high points on the surface of the mold. The high points are basically the outlines of each of the water droplets in the design. And I'm again purposely doing this a little bit sloppy. I want there to be black sponge marks unevenly along the edge, and it's also okay if I touch the middle of the droplet a bit with the black cocoa butter as well. It all helps give it a rough edge, and the shape of this sponge definitely helps with that as well. You could also use a full star shape sponge or a square or triangle, whatever you have, but it definitely helps to use one that has corners. For design number 2, which my sister named Sprinkle, I also start with black cocoa butter, but I apply it using the airbrush. On the original test design, I did this part with only the pastry brush, which created a nice texture on the edge. I'm going to show you how I still create that texture later, but it's a lot quicker to apply the bulk of the black portion with the airbrush. So here's how I replicate the design. On one end of the mold, I spray the corners and the far edge. Then on one long side, I spray across to about 2/3 of the mold. And on the opposite side, I go only about 1/2 across the mold. And then I just connect those two lines in a diagonal and fill in the area like this. And here's my only gripe with this mold. When you wipe it on the paper towel, you have to be really careful because it's so shallow, it is really easy to accidentally wipe off some of your cocoa butter on those droplet outlines. So I just spray those spots really quick to touch them up. Now to start design number 3, which I call spiral, I spray every corner and edge in each cavity of the mold first. Next, I take my larger, round, trimmed sponge brush, and I do this next step one cavity at a time. That phrase is a mouthful. So I completely fill in the bar with black, and then I immediately spin the sponge brush into the mold to take out some of the black cocoa butter, and it leaves behind a negative spiral. I don't follow too much of a pattern here. I like to spiral in the roundest part of the droplet first, and then just fill in the gaps. I also focus most on the inside of the mold, which also happens pretty naturally anyway because the sponge doesn't fit into the corners of the mold very well. So it gives a nice fade to black along the outside, which is a cool look, I think. Don't pay too much attention to this. I think I wanted to fix one of my spirals, so I sprayed a little extra back into the second cavity. But you know, I'm a one-man show over here, so the way I filmed this, these are actually 2 different molds. So don't try to compare their patterns exactly. Now to finish off the black section on the sprinkle design, I take my tempered black cocoa butter and a pastry brush, and I'm just going to extend the black area using the brush to give it that nice lined texture. And when I do this, I just let the brush touch wherever it naturally goes to create a fun, uneven line pattern. I like this line pattern because when I do the next step, which is gold, on the finished bar, the gold peeks through these lines, which I think is a really fun detail. For the next step on the moss design, I grab my edible gold luster dust. I mix it into a paint using lemon extract. And in case you don't know, the reason why is that lemon extract is high in alcohol, which means that after I apply the paint, the extract evaporates and leaves behind just the luster pattern. You can also use vodka or food-grade ethanol for this as well. So to apply the gold, I use the smaller 4-point star sponge brush, and I'm doing essentially the same pattern I did with the black by tracing the outline of each droplet, but I'm going outside of where I applied the black to highlight those edges, and again, purposely doing it a little bit sloppy so that there are some extra gold scuffs and marks in the droplet shapes as well. And while I've got my gold paint out, I'll add the next step to the spiral design. For this, I'm using the smaller trimmed round brush. I get a bit of the gold paint on the sponge and then do the same spiral motion with the brush to leave a gold spiral over top of the black in the mold. The key to getting a nice spiral is to not have too much paint on the sponge, and also not to press very hard. When this design is done, the goal is to be able to see a black spiral, a thin gold spiral, and then green peeking through from behind. But if you add too much gold, you won't see the green and you won't have the cool layered spiral effect either. All right, to finish up the sprinkle design, I need to quickly mix some more paint. I'm going to apply 2 different kinds of splatter behind the black layer. First, I use a smaller round brush to tap on some sprinkles into the mold. When I do this, I'm aiming for the upper right corner of the mold. And to do this splatter really easy, just hold the paintbrush where you want it and tap it with your finger. Next, I use a toothbrush to add some finer sprinkles into the mold. And for this, I'm aiming along the left edge where the black cocoa butter ends. It takes a bit of practice with the toothbrush because I find that it sprays in a direction from the bristles I don't expect it to. So always be sure, if you are particular about where the splatter is going, to practice a couple times first on a piece of parchment paper or towel. And here are the designs up to this point in the process. I think they look pretty cool with just the black and gold. We've got sprinkle, spiral, and moss. Next step is that all 11 of the molds get sprayed with a nice even coat of green. If you want more information on airbrushing and airbrush settings, check out my video in this card or linked in the description. With dark colors, if you do too many coats or make the coat too thick, or even sometimes back it with milk chocolate, they can get a lot darker than you think and sometimes even look black. If you saw my last video with the teal bars, you'll understand what I mean because it came out really, really dark. So for these coats of green, I am purposely just doing a normal thin coat of green and I am just doing one coat. And to help keep the green lighter and brighter, I'm also going to back all of the molds in white cocoa butter after this. I will be molding them in milk chocolate, so I just wanted to make sure that the green stands out against the black and doesn't become too dark. You'll notice on this design, I am only filling in the empty mold space with green. No need to spray it behind the black because, well, that is just a waste of expensive cocoa butter. Here you'll see me attempt to back my molds with white. And this is what an airbrush looks like when it has some sort of a clog. If you've experienced this, you will know how frustrating it is. This time I tried and tried to melt whatever was blocking the path with my heat gun, but it didn't work. So I ended up having to pour out the cocoa butter and clear out the airbrush and then fill the cup back up again. And thankfully it worked. And this is what it should look like when you spray. Just to keep things tidy and avoid getting cocoa butter all over my fingers during the molding process, I like to clean all of the edges of each mold with a paper towel. Now I've already tempered a bunch of milk chocolate and I'm holding it at working temperature in my warming tank. I have tutorials on this as well. I will link here and below in case you need them. And guys, I scribbled somewhere on a piece of paper how much chocolate I tempered and how much the shells weighed and how much I would need for the filling. But when I went back and looked at it, I couldn't tell what was what. So I can't tell you how much I have in here. But my tip is that you always want to temper more chocolate than you'll need. If I had to guess, I think I started with 4 to 5 pounds for this step, and that was more than I needed. But it's easier to work with more chocolate and you don't want to run out. So I just shell all 11 of the molds just like I would any other chocolate mold. There's just one difference with bars, and that's the direction that you scrape. You'll see that when I scrape this bar mold, rather than go long ways across the mold, I go long ways across the bars. which is opposite of what I would normally do with a bonbon mold. The scrapers aren't always completely straight, and also if you put a lot of pressure, they can press down in the center and get caught sometimes. So you'll just get a better scrape going long ways on bars, and if you try it out yourself, you'll be able to feel the difference. In case you're curious, I did all the decorating on one day, then the next day I did all the shelling, filling, and unmolding. There were no steps that I had to wait in between, and if you wanted to, you could do everything all in one day if you had time. So next I'm adding a caramel ribbon to the bars. I was experimenting with different ways of doing the ribbon because these molds have those convenient little pockets that create little pools of caramel. I thought it would be delicious to bite into one. In the end though, I decided to just go back and forth in strips and let the caramel settle a little bit into pools on its own if it wanted to. Either way, there is plenty of caramel, which is what I wanted. If you watched my last video, you already saw me testing out this flavor with the salted caramel, cornflake, and crispy pearls. And this project is why I was doing that. So I'm doing the same thing here. I started with 2 cups of cornflakes and then I added 3/4 of a cup of dark crispy pearls and mixed them together as I crunched up the cornflakes into smaller bits. I decided I wanted more cornflakes, so I added just 1 more cup. In my warmer, I have the amount of chocolate that I predicted I would need to fill 11 molds. I wanted enough without having too much extra, because extra filling is a lot harder to reuse than just plain chocolate. I calculated the amount I needed by weighing a bar to know the total chocolate I'd need for 1 bar. Then I also weighed a mold after I shelled it to calculate how much chocolate the shells take. I figured out the total for all of the molds for both of those measurements. Then I took the difference to find out the filling weight. I deducted a little bit from that total to account for the crunchy mix-ins and caramel already in the mold. So it wasn't perfect, but it worked out all right. And then any extra filling that I had, I just spread out onto parchment, let it set up, and then broke it up into a tasty little snack. So you might know that filling bar molds with solid chocolate and crunchies can be a little bit annoying because the crunchies tend to stick up above the mold and will get caught on a scraper if you try to smooth them out. You don't want to underfill the mold because you need to make sure the filling chocolate comes in contact with the full shell so they contract nicely and pull away from the mold evenly. Sometimes it's okay to overfill a mold a little or even have the crunchies stick up above the mold if you don't mind that look. But in my case, I couldn't have that happen at all because our chocolate wrappers were a perfect fit for this size of chocolate bar. If I had any crunchies sticking up, the wrappers would not be able to fit onto the bars tight. So it was important that I got them really smooth. In my last video, I showed how you can underfill the mold and then cap them with plain milk chocolate to get a really smooth, flat bar. But this time I wanted there to be as many crunchies as possible and not waste space with plain chocolate. By the end of 11 bar molds, I had a technique down that worked pretty well for me. I used a 1/4 cup to scoop some filling and pour it into my mold, tapped it down a little, then I used a small offset metal spatula to push the chocolate up into all the corners and the edges. Then I took my scraper and cleaned up the edges by starting in the center of the mold and scraping off of each end. And the angle you want to hold the scraper right here is important to this technique. By tilting the scraper in the direction that you're scraping, it pushes any of the crunchies sticking out of the chocolate down rather than catching on them and dragging them across the surface. Of course, occasionally a crunchie can get caught, but for the most part, this works really well to push them back down and then just glide across the top, scraping off any excess chocolate and giving you a clean edge. And I do this one cavity at a time because the tempered chocolate tends to set up pretty quickly, and getting all 3 bars filled and scraped clean in that time can be difficult. So I found that doing them one after the other was just easier and also kept things a lot cleaner. After filling, the bars are almost done. Before I pop them into the fridge to contract, I first let them set up at room temperature. I wait until they turn matte on the surface, which probably is about 10 minutes. After 20 minutes in the fridge, they should be super easy to unmold. And like I mentioned earlier, be careful with bars to not flip the mold straight over onto the counter. Because of the large surface area and thinness of the bar, that force will crack or even break them. Instead, just place your unmolding board on the top and then flip the mold over like this. And don't forget, I have some of my own unmolding boards now up on my website. I have matte black and clear. They are a touch bigger than the board you see me using here. And if you guys have any color or finish requests for other boards I should make in the future, just let me know in the comments. And before I show you how we wrapped up all these save the date bars, let's take a look at how each of the final designs turned out. Alright, so before I put these into their custom save the date wrappers, I'm going to first wrap them in gold foil wrappers. I found these on Amazon and I will link them below. Guys, you cannot imagine how hard it is to find foiled wrappers big enough for bars. It's so weird because it's a very common thing to do. Wrap chocolate bars in foil, yet none of them are quite big enough. I bought some that were 8 inches by 8 inches, but the thing is they need to be quite a bit bigger than the bar in order to cover it once you fold it around. And I wouldn't even say that these bars are all that big, but I ended up with these sheets, which are 11 by 8 inches. So that's pretty big. So to get a tight wrap, I like to first do a crisp fold on one end of the wrapper. After wrapping so many bars, I know close enough by eye where to fold. I'd guess it's about 3 inches in. Then I mark the other one by using the length of the chocolate bar and then fold it crisp as well. Now I gently lay the bar face down onto the paper and fold over the edges. It helps here to pinch down the sides and then fold diagonally at the corners to lock it into place. Do that on both ends. Then I fold over the first side, and I like to carefully crease that edge. And then a little trick to keep the wrapper tight is to roll the bar over to create the last fold. And then once it's folded, you can give it a nice crease as well. For the paper wrapper, I use a tape roller to stick it down. These are the wrappers. Aren't they so cool? My brother designed them and also came up with a whole process on how to cut them all out uniform and fold the edges really clean. He made all these cool templates with his 3D printer to streamline the process. I think they turned out so nice. So I just put one strip of glue along the top edge and carefully fold over all the tabs tight and stick them together. Now to deliver the bars, I felt like it needed somewhat of a small presentation rather than just simply handing over a bar. So I got some white chocolate boxes, some nice green ribbon, and I found these real rose petals. They say that they are freeze dried to preserve them, but they have the exact same texture as real rose petals. I was really impressed. So to package up the bars, I just sprinkled some rose petals on top, leaving the bar to peek out a little bit underneath, and then just tied on this nice green bow. A little tip I've found for tying bows is to tie it facing the opposite of the direction that you want it, because once you're done, it will be backwards. Then you flip it around and make all the adjustments to make it look nice. All right, guys, I hope that you enjoyed today's video and that you learned something new. I really loved working on this project, and it's also fun that I get to share it with you guys, so I hope that you enjoyed it. It was also a great opportunity for me to practice making bars. I've never made this many bars at once before, so it was kind of fun to do a bigger production of chocolate bars. If you liked this video, please give me a like and leave me a comment down below. It helps me out a lot. And let me know which of the 3 final designs is your favorite. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, today's the day. If you'd like to see something else that's sweet, just click on one of these thumbnails. Thanks so much for watching today, and I'll see you soon. Bye.